17,000. Those guys must really be desperate. This could really save my neck. Get back to the ship and get her ready.
Welcome, Masters and Padawans, to episode 551 of Full of Sith. I am one of the hosts of the show, Holly Frey, and with me is Brian. Not Brian Young, number one Fry, my beloved Brian Frey. Hi, Brian.
The other Brian with the correct spelling.
Don't be saucy. Right out of the gate, he's all, I'm nervous, and then he's saucy. I thought it would be fun for this episode because Brian is busy doing other stuff, running around Gen Con, etc. To feature my beloved Brian because we, go on many Star Wars adventures together, and I thought it would be enjoyable for our listeners to kind of hear some of what that's about and also discover the joy that is my better half. First, Brian, I don't know if you know, but for a guest on Full of Sith, the first thing we always ask them is, what was your introduction to Star Wars? What's your Star Wars meet cute?
I was one of the originals in 77. I was 8 years old. And of course it blew my tiny little mind. In fact, I just got a tattoo because back then I was drawing. I had a gift of a blank page sketchbook, and the night, I think it was the night, the actual details are a little fuzzy, but I did go home after seeing Star Wars for the first time, still supernova-ing in my brain, and drew a couple things that I remembered from my first viewing, one of which was R2-D2, and I recently figured out that would make a great tattoo, so I just got that done. The bandages are still on.
Yeah. What else did you draw?
I remember having my sketchbook. I'm a pack rat, so I still have the book, of course. A mouse droid in an Imperial hallway, which I got all those details wrong, but I remember there being a little boxy droid. In addition to the R2-D2 droid, I want to say an X-Wing and TIE Fighter. And
I feel like I've seen an X-Wing, yeah.
Really bad rendition of the logo, the Star
it.
Wars.
I don't think it's bad. I think it's charming. Here's the second question that I will ask you, which is not something we normally ask any of our guests.
Uh-oh.
How do you put up with me?
Oh,
That's loaded.
You may have told this story before, but we met... Well, actually, we met on the phone and then met in person, and we just were clicking the whole time. So that's not a trick question at all.
Well, it wasn't how you met me. It was how do you put up with me. But that's a different thing.
Because it was... I'm not going to be corny and say it was love at first sight, because we were kind of digging each other before we actually sighted each other. But yeah, we clicked.
Yeah, we're very lucky. And we're lucky because we are very different personalities, but we love a lot of the same things, most notably and germane to this show, Star Wars. So, first though, I want to talk about, now that we've gotten your first meet cute out of the way. Oh, I will ask, who's your favorite character?
Overall, I think that would be R2-D2.
Solid choice.
Yeah, I mean, the tattoo is fresh. But I just kind of lucked out that he has been in movie after movie after movie after movie over the decades, plural. So it's he's been an influence, just his steadfastness and ability to get things done. I don't necessarily emulate that, but it's an inspiration.
It's interesting because I feel like, as we just said, you and I both are very big Star Wars fans, but our fandom manifests in very different ways, right? Like, I didn't know for the longest time who your favorite character was, because you're not like me where you're like, I'm going to make a million outfits that are all based on this character. I'm going to talk about this character nonstop. I'm going to... I really it was pretty recent in the last few years. We've been together 28 years, and it was only in the last few years that I was like, who is your favorite Star Wars? Star Wars like I could have named probably your top 3 to 5, but I wasn't sure who your fave was.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I have favorite looks. Like, I love the look of the Hoth characters, both Rebel and Imperial. I forget the costume designer. Anyway.
John Mallow.
Okay. But that snow look, the winter look, has always been a favorite. And lots of different fandoms of mine, like the G.I. Joe characters, many other movies and TV shows and comic books. But as far as actual character, I think I'd go with R2.
So what I wanted to talk to you about, among other things, I want to talk to you a lot about toys, and we'll get to that. But first, you and I were recently at San Diego Comic-Con for our first time. We had never been before. We kind of made our plan to go a little late in the game, so we did not go to like all of the big reveal panels and whatnot. But we had, I think, like a pretty good dip your toe in, a lot of walking the con floor, etc. And I am just curious, as a first-timer, what your overall impressions of the con were.
Yeah, I had no illusions about getting into the big panels. We've got friends who've been going to San Diego for many, many, many years. Comic book friends, our new friends from Heroes of the Halcyon. So I have had some expectation just hearing their stories, and it pretty much lived up to those expectations, just as far as the hugeness of it and the kinds of fans that are there. I liked it. Yeah.
You, historically, in my experience, have a pretty good streak of good luck, which has paid off for me many times, in terms of, like, trying to do or get something that is maybe not easy to achieve. I mean, if we're, like, in Disney World, you have a magic touch. I don't know how you do it. You're not doing anything wheedly or cajoly or anything, but you can walk up to a booked restaurant. I will have just walked up and said, "Do you have a table?" And they'll say, "No, go away." And you will walk up and say, "Do you have a table?" And they will say, "Right this way, sir. Is the rest of your party here?" And you similarly had kind of a good piece of good fortune that benefited me while we were at Comic-Con, because the one thing that I wanted probably above anything else was
the Chopper Tiki mug.
Yes. Geeky Tiki just released a Chopper Tiki mug, and I wanted it real bad. And we went up. We didn't see any of it on display at the Twink booth, which is where it was going to be. We asked. They said it's sold out. But they said, we heard there's another box that was still on the loading dock, and one of our people is going to go get it and bring it back. But there were people already in line to get that. And so I was like, I don't want to wait in line. And we had other stuff to do. We were looking around the con and meeting up with people. And then what happens? Brian, while I'm at another booth talking to friends, just goes, "I'm going to go check." And what happened?
Yeah, it's all in the eyes, baby. I walked up to the same guy we'd talked with just a few minutes before, and I don't know why I was acting all clandestine, but I just kind of like half covered my mouth, and I was like, "Did that chopper droid ever come back?" Like the box that they expected to bring back to the booth to replenish the stock. And he kind of did a similar, "We have 2 left." And I said, "Can I buy one right now?" And he said, "Yes, you can." And that's how it
now
happened.
I'm a happy baby. More importantly, while we were at Comic-Con, you were on one of the panels called The Evolution of Toy Collecting.
Mm-hmm.
I think it speaks to the fact that people love toys, because it wasn't necessarily Star Wars only, although you did talk a lot about Star Wars. But your panel was like literally the last programming hour of the day on the last day of the con. And it didn't, you weren't at 100% capacity, but you were very well attended. I would say 2/3 or above of that room was filled.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, which speaks to how much people love toys, which is why I wanted to talk to you. Because we don't talk a lot about Star Wars toys and action figures on the show. We do on occasion, but I feel like you have this 40
plus year, yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to do the math on 78 when we would have actually gotten our first toys. But anyway, what is that?
Although I do still have, like, I'm from before there were Star Wars toys. there were, I had some Hot Wheels, the usual little kid stuff, Hot Wheels. I think Fisher-Price had Adventure People play sets and figures, which the prototype Star Wars figures are actually based on. You can see those in Rancho Obi-Wan. And maybe a couple other pre-Star Wars things that I still have pack-ratted away. But yeah, Star Wars toys, like, really, that lit my fuse, as they say.
Yeah. And so that panel, the panel audio, I believe, is going to be eventually posted on the Heroes of the Halcyon podcast. So you can listen to that in its entirety there, and I highly recommend you do. But will you just give us kind of a brief overview of what you touched on, from like where you started talking about it to where we are today? Yeah,
the title was The Evolution of Toy Collecting, from the Sears Wish Book to Etsy Storefronts, from the 70s to today. And it was not what we've collected, but how we've collected over the decades. Those Sears and other department store catalogs, those became like checklists for Santa. And of course you would mail away or your parents / Santa would mail away for those toys. And mail away is never really left, but other ways to get toys has changed quite a lot, from brick and mortar stores, standalone toy stores like Toys R Us and KB. And then, of course, the rise of the internet and internet shops and the ability to track things down. Those catalogs, the print catalogs, were how we learned about toys back then. And then there became... the internet became the new way to hunt for toys, to find out what was coming up, keep track of what you've got, connect with other collectors, form a community of collectors. And now with Etsy and other storefronts, makers are actually producing toys or files for 3D printers that are filling in gaps for dioramas and collections. It's just fascinating to me how it's grown and changed, and the paradigm shifts. And but mail order is still always in there.
Yeah. I'm going to talk to you more about particularly some of the more recent developments, but I want to backtrack a little bit because I want to talk about where it really all started. I want to know what the first figure you got was. I'm not sure I know this.
I think it was the Stormtrooper. Of course, most people probably know Kenner put out the original 12, they call them. The 12-back cards showed, I don't know if I can name them all off. It was, of course, Luke and Leia, Han and Chewie, R2 and 3PO. There was the Death Squad Commander, Jawa, Tusken Raider, Vader, and a Stormtrooper, and I wasn't counting, so I don't know where I'm at.
I don't either.
I think it was a Stormtrooper. It could have been Luke, but I don't know that I would have gotten that figure if I'd seen him on the shelf before I saw the movie. I think the Stormtrooper came out before the movie or alongside the movie.
Wait. For Empire?
No, for New Hope.
It wouldn't have come out before because we didn't get toys until 78.
Oh, true. I'm sorry.
So can you name the original 12?
Okay, count me down. Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, R2, 3PO, Vader, Trooper, Death Squad Commander, Jawa and Tusken Raider, and there's one more.
I'm not sure what it is. I'm going to look it up while we sit here.
Okay. But I think my first was the Stormtrooper figure. Much like when Return of the Jedi came out, that Biker Scout was like, I think he came out before that movie, like as a teaser. And clearly it was the Imperial, color scheme. But I love that vibe. What? Who did I
You're
miss?
going to feel really silly. Who is the mage?
Oh, Obi-Wan.
Yeah. I mean, I feel silly. I didn't conjure it either in my little brain.
So sorry, Alec Guinness. I think I would have gotten the Stormtrooper first. I'm not positive. I believe the Land Speeder was my first toy, so I must have had Luke really early on so he could drive the Land Speeder.
Anybody can drive the Land Speeder if
But I'm
they
sure,
want.
yeah, as soon as R2 came out, I snatched him up. Whatever allowance or birthday or Christmas or maybe I got a very rare good report card. I don't remember.
So I'm really curious because obviously there has been a lot of toy collecting between then and now. I'm going to two-prong this. Today, looking back, what is your favorite of those early characters? And then I'll hit you with the second part in a minute.
Strictly speaking, in the toys?
Yeah.
That might have been the AT-AT driver or AT-AT driver, however you choose to pronounce that. He was just a good-looking, chunky character, action figure. And then if you were lucky enough to get the AT-AT itself, I mean, that had to have a pilot. So those were hand in hand.
You, I know, as a kid, played with these toys ad nauseum.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the best way to ask you to tell us what your play was like. Did you tend to act out stuff from the movies, or were you riffing and doing your own stuff?
I had a best friend who lived next door, and he and I would play. Usually, our house had a little more space, so we would play in and around our family room, and I seem to recall we did a lot of original stories, like between movie stories. Actually, when I was a kid, my dad had a workshop, and at the time, Kenner wasn't making a lot of play sets, which is another reason I'm just fascinated by what makers are doing on Etsy now. They're making actual play sets. So I built my own play sets out of wood from my dad's workshop, and in our scenarios, Han and Chewie stuck around with the rebellion, but what are they going to do? You know, former smuggler. So I built them just a little workshop because they seemed to be handy. And so I just had a little 3-walled workshop with a workbench, and like any droid figures I may have broken, like ended up in the corner as like junk piles. And so we kind of played our own original stories, I think.
I love that you kind of, without probably meaning to, modeled your Han Solo and Chewbacca workshop on your dad's workshop.
Hey, that was the best job they could do.
Right. I love it so much. You also made a hospital, right? Was that for them or was that for Joe Figures?
No, that was for Star Wars. I made, we didn't have a good, command center. So I built a couple of those. And they were like really clunky. They were scrap wood and magic marker details and stuff like that. But I built a couple of command centers, barracks, a couple of hospitals or medical bays, because we had 2MD and FX7. Han and Chewie's workshop, garage for a mini rig or two. Whatever I needed. Maybe like one weekend instead of playing, I put together just out of scrap wood, whatever we needed.
I love it. I love it so much. I think that speaks to what really makes Star Wars magical for so many people, right? It sparked our imaginations as kids. So now the second part of that question really is, and this is hard. This might be a little bit of a Sophie's choice. What's your favorite action figure now? And this is action figure specific, not toy sets, etc. And that's a lot to consider because we have had, I don't know how many figures we've collected together. Are we in the thousands? I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Over the decades, and what do we had, a dozen movies plus TV shows now. There's been a lot of variations on figures, so I can't just say I liked this Luke Skywalker, because like, well,
It's like, which era?
which movie, which era, which costume,
Which collection?
like buff power of the Force, or
Right,
the
that's what I was
more
thinking of.
screen accurate. This one. Gosh, I don't know.
You can even top 3 it if you have a hard time.
I have a thing for pilots, like the AT-AT driver. I
Yeah.
love the X-Wing pilot, and maybe Luke's Hoth X-Wing pilot costume a little more. Of course, the TIE Fighter pilot's lumped in there too, but he's basically a black version of the AT-AT driver. I'm not sure who my favorite figure was. Like, we have a blue snaggletooth.
Yeah.
So, if I had to rescue any of them, I might grab that one for sure. Not might, I would grab that one. We've been getting into the Cantina figures a lot lately, and now the HasLab is coming. So
Oh, we're going to talk about that soon.
we're going to have to make sure we have all of those, unless they're ridiculous on eBay. I've also some of what I've been buying from Etsy has been figures that Kenner or Hasbro never made. Like there's a decraniated server from, I guess, Dryden Voss's yacht.
Yeah.
That I think is great that someone made. Someone made the human Jabba the Hutt that is from the deleted scene of A New Hope that met up with Han. So there's some fun brand new stuff and some fun old stuff. I may have to think on that.
Listen, am I gonna recognize that of the pilots, you didn't say a thing about the Cloud City pilots? They get no love. I heard it. I heard the lack of love. That's okay. You know me. I want Cloud City everything.
I mean, we do collect. We've got a lot of the old stuff that I had when I was a kid, and together you and I have collected a lot of the new stuff, the newer versions, the better sculpts, the reissues. Now they're doing the retro versions, which is the old molds, and it's fun to see those on cards again. And now retro versions of figures that were never actually made, 40 years ago. Like specifically for the Disney Plus shows that I think is very funny.
Yeah. I feel like I would be remiss if I did not open up discussion to how much things changed once we started getting 6-inch scale, like Black Series. Because these, to me, in my mind, and you tell me what you think, I don't know. I mean, we've talked about this some just between the two of us, but I feel like these represent this shift where it is less about maybe the spark that we talked about, like the let's go make a hospital out of plywood scraps, to I want to collect hyper realistic or very realistic looking toys. Whereas the early stage toys, just based on technology, weren't exact replicas. And obviously, like, if you look at some of them, they really, really were not replicating, even in, like, color scheme, what any of the actors or characters looked like. Like, Greedo is a classic example. That outfit that his original figure that was in production for a long time wears is not something he ever wore until they made a callback to it in animation many years later. But with the introduction of those 6-inch ones, things got a lot more realistic very quickly. And I have always wondered, and I've never polled friends with kids, but like, to me, it always seemed like they were like, so you've grown up now. Maybe you would like more toys that are bigger and more expensive and easier to see with your aging eyes. What is your take on it?
I think the biggest change with those is storage space, display space. I do have some shelves set up for those because I did start collecting those, but they quickly take up a lot of space. Back when, like, we are in a time now where a lot of those brick and mortar stores have closed, but they couldn't stock the vehicles, the very few what's that, 1/12 scale vehicles that came with the 6-inch the Black Series stuff for a very short time. Like the First Order TIE Fighter was on shelves, but boy, they could only have 2 or 3 on the floor at a time. I do love the new attention to detail. Guns that can fit in holsters, just the detail of clothing and accessories, the faces, the costume. It's just a lot nicer presentation of the character that you remember from the movies or now TV shows.
Yeah.
But because of that space, I've kind of had to start restricting what I collect. Like I want it all, but it's impractical to get like maybe both scales that are offered. And Lord help you if you want to get into the Sideshow or Hot Toys 1/6 scale stuff.
Right. Cost aside, they're just harder to display and store.
Yeah, and in a fair manner, like something you spend that much on, you want to really show off. But if you have to cram them onto a shelf, that's just not as fun.
Yeah. You have, in talking about the size and scale of things, accidentally given me the perfect transition to the next thing I wanted to ask you about, which is HasLab projects. Right, the first one was the Razor Crest, where... Oh, it was the sail barge, not the Razor Crest. I was literally picturing the sail barge in my head and said the Razor Crest, sorry. The first one was the sail barge, and I remember being kind of blown away by just reading about it when they first put it up. So just in case any of our listeners are not part of the whole HasLab jam, right? This is Hasbro's program where you can pledge. Basically, you pre-buy things. It's like a pre-order, and then they put it into production.
Crowdfunded, yes.
Right. So they're enormous. And I am curious, we are very fortunate, and we got the sail barge right out of the gate. That was not a question. So I'm very curious what you think about the program as a whole. 2, we've had one, I'm reluctant to call it a failure, but we've had one that hasn't funded, which was the Rancor. So I'm curious if you think like this is a ships only or play sets at like big play sets only game. And then if you want, we can wax rhapsodic about the Cantina. I do have some thoughts about it and how its funding went. But I want to know everything you think about it.
From a manufacturer's side, it's nice to have a safe bet. Instead of putting your heart and soul into, the long process of development and tooling and production, and then you get peg warmers. So I totally understand and would not mind if they broadened the whole crowdfunded thing. It's like a pre-order, but I guess a longer lead time. Like pre-orders, usually the product's been made and they just kind of get a sense of maybe how many to make. But the HasLab stuff, they get a real sense before they go too deep into any kind of development, just how successful it might be.
It's like they do a prototype, but the actual functional, what we're going to base the production line off of is not locked.
Yeah. And some of them fund and some of them don't. There's been 1/1 scale HasLabs that have like just taken off, like the Ghostbusters Proton Pack. But then I think it was Reva's lightsaber that...
Oh, that's right.
Just didn't happen, unfortunately. Or the Rancor. There was just G.I. Joe HasLab that I think funded in less than 24 hours. Usually they give, 2 months?
Yeah.
A month? Something like that. To reach their several thousand backers. And this, it was the Cobra Rattler. It just took off, funded almost immediately, which is hilarious and wonderful. I was tempted by that, but I had to kind of, again, with the space issue, had to restrict my collecting, and I really can't get back into G.I. Joe.
Right, you had a lot.
in our current house. We would have to get another house, I think, kind of like Guillermo del Toro has his house of collections.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Then my clothes can move somewhere too.
But I've really appreciated the whole concept of the crowdfunded project. And of course, disappointed if something I really wanted didn't get backed. But it's a great gauge on like how popular the item will be. And I've seen them on the secondary market too.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned this idea of gauging the popularity of a thing, because I will admit, like, my own bias and lens that skews my perception of things, right? When they announced the Cantina, because I am Cantina obsessed, I don't know that you're as Cantina obsessed as I am, but you always come along for the ride because you're such a good and supportive spouse. But I thought, oh man, this thing is going to fund in a week. Everybody wants the Cantina. Of course, who doesn't want the Cantina? It's the best thing. But it didn't. It didn't fund until really close to the end. And then it made its first stretch goal. But that was a little bit of a surprise, I know, to me and certainly to many people. Did you, like me, think the Cantina would be more of a sure thing than it was?
I don't know, because as you brought up, the HasLabs outside of vehicles have been iffy. And this is a playset. There is a large Jabba's Throne Room playset that I think sold all right. I don't get into the nitty-gritty of sales figures and whatnot, but I think it was fairly popular. And it was put out to kind of capitalize on the Book of Boba Fett and him claiming his spot in Jabba's palace. I think it came with the old Bib Fortuna figure. But now we do have a Cantina of our own set up in our display room. And it was built off of... There was some 2-packed figure sets that came out a while back that came with just a span of Cantina bar top and stools. And then some makers were making the furniture and even the kind of horseshoe front end of the bar. So we have our own kind of makeshift Cantina diorama going on, which I'm debating if we need to keep once we get the Cantina.
What?
The official, licensed Hasbro Cantina. I mean, space-wise, come on.
That is Star Wars wife going, we can't get rid of anything.
Yeah.
Very professional on my part.
But at least through that, and in the display, we've, over the years, have collected a lot of the figures that they did officially make for the Cantina. But again, with the crowdfunded stuff, if it doesn't, now we can start to look online for people who are making those figures anyway. I'm not condoning, or endorsing buying bootleg figures, but if they're not going to be made officially...
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Yeah, I did kind of marvel at how slow it was for the Cantina to fund through. Thank goodness, because it is my favorite thing. To me, that's more exciting than any of the ships, even though I've loved the other HasLab projects. So you have once again given me the entree into the next thing, because I want to talk about fan-made toys, and there are a lot of really good fan-made toys thanks to 3D printing. But I'm curious, as this kind of it's not even a secondary market, it's a parallel market to the official licensed stuff that sprang up and has really grown incredibly rapidly. Like, what to you has been the most surprising part of all of this, of like suddenly being able to go to a maker's own website and order something painted or unpainted, resin printed or printed in plastics? Like, there are so many options now for a great many toys.
Referring back to your question about what my favorite toy might be, we talked about that in our panel at San Diego, and I said I did have a super nerdy answer, or I could hold up a spool of filament for the 3D printer and say this has the potential of becoming my favorite toy. Because, like you said, there's a lot of people kind of creating some on their own. What's been most fascinating is that I could buy a file, a $3 file from someone, upload it to my 3D printer, and print out an action figure. With colored filaments, you could even do like large components of them in a particular color. But you could, I haven't learned how to paint miniatures yet, but
we're gonna have to soon because they're piling up.
But once you get good at that skill, you could make what looks like a figure you bought off the shelf, which is just amazing to me. Amazing to my little kid brain. That if you want something, you could literally download it and print it, and you have it. So I do love that aspect of it for sure.
Yeah, we're in an interesting time right now where there are a lot of people making customs and doing customs. And the price for a finished piece is still pretty high. Because, I am in no way complaining about that fact. Those are, handmade. They're people hand painting them, doing the work. The hourly rate, that is very fair when you get an expensive custom piece.
I call them nerd sculptures because, there's some people who like to collect marble statues of, Greek gods or whatever. We are collecting little plastic statues of our favorite figure from our history, our pop culture history.
Right. It's not all that different when you think about it. But I am wondering...
And the value of them is similar, or at least proportionate.
Right. I'm wondering how much, and this is purely speculative, neither of us has particular insight into it, but I'm wondering how much the licensed toy industry is following and taking note of all of these kind of private side art dealers, essentially, where they're I don't know, should we be making Therm Scissor Punch action figures because somebody wants them clearly, but yet we still kind of keep getting a lot of iterations of the same characters. So I'm very fascinated by that whole thing. I would never claim I know or understand how those decisions work, but I'm curious your thoughts on the matter.
I mean, they are business people. I'm sure they're always doing market research. They have to make what will sell, but they also have to stay in tune with who is buying. There's new Star Wars fans every day. They come in from, I'm learning, and it's fascinating to see, they come in from all different avenues now. Growing up, it was the movies, maybe comics and books. But nowadays, it's the games. It's the Disney Plus shows. We learned a friend of ours worked on Galaxy's Edge, but hadn't seen Star Wars, didn't know what this Star Wars stuff was that he was working on, and decided to check it out, and now he's a huge Star Wars fan. And they're coming in from all over. So the toy companies have to be just conscious of, you might be tired of seeing the 20th version of this Luke Skywalker figure, but to someone else, that's the first time they've ever seen that Star Wars toy at all in any iteration.
Yeah. That's a good thing to remember, because I do feel too, there is that mentality where it's easy to forget that the people collecting toys are not all old schoolers and haven't been at it even for, in some cases, 5 or 10 years, let alone 40. They really are just falling in love with the whole thing now. That's an important thing to remember.
Yeah, and as a collector, it's, in addition to all the storage space issues, it's, that is a great looking Luke, but I have one similar from, 2022 and one from 2004 and one from 1996. And, he's got a little bit better paint, so maybe I'll let that one go.
Yeah. I am thinking about all of the many things we have, because I lost myself for a second thinking about how my collecting has it's almost like, because I know you have toys covered, I have ventured off into a lot of other areas where I'm like, no, I want all the cocktail glasses. I want all the weird Star Wars tiki. I want the droids. I want earrings. I want all the other stuff. But then I always have, thanks to you, anything I would want to play with is right there ready. You have been asked a question a number of times, and I want to talk about this a little bit, because you don't have an answer for it. And I love that, which is like, people will ask, what is your white whale? What is the toy you're always after? And that's not how you collect. Will you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we've been around a lot of different collectors. For instance, I'm a removed from packaging collector. Not even to play with, but just I like that display. And there's others who, that is what they collect, is they like the display of the figure inside the packaging. They love the box art, which is great. I bought the book, The Man Who Shot Luke Skywalker, because I love the product photography that they did decades ago. So I don't necessarily have, you're right, a toy that I missed out on and now I'm going after. A few years ago, actually, I got the Imperial Shuttle, the Shuttle Tidarium, as a gift from a friend, and that was something I missed out on its original run. And delighted to get that now. That was something I was kind of maybe interested in, like, finally getting. I'd seen it at some toy shows. So it was nice to actually finally have it for real. And then with the Haslet stuff in particular, they've managed to scratch an itch I didn't know I had. I didn't think like we would ever see a sail barge toy. That thing is just mammoth. Wouldn't have shown up on shelves. It is a pricey thing, but that the Razor Crest is a beautiful ship. The Ghost now is coming out, I believe, at the end of the year. Another beautiful version of a toy that I don't even know, like, dedicated toy stores would have bothered to put out because it is so huge and pricey. You know, there's the mass market that they have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else right now that, as far as toys they haven't made, I wish they would make. The Canto Bite patrons would be amazing. All the weird alien folks.
I want that lady with the floating dog.
In their fine dress. Even a fathier would be cool to have.
Yeah.
I don't know we'll ever revisit that or not. Maybe I'll just have to get good at modeling again, 3D modeling, and make our own Canto Bite patrons.
That sounds amazing. We're going to transition off toys, but before I do, is there anything else you wanted to talk about in toys?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. So my next thing is more general, because we are in a time of ridiculous good fortune in terms of constantly getting more Star Wars, right? We, we are old enough, not to belabor the point that we're older, but, we remember a time when there was not new Star Wars stuff. We met in that time when it was like, the new issues of the movies had just come out on video, but that was all we had. We did not know we were getting new movies. We weren't getting new toys yet. Dark times.
The dark times.
Yeah. But now we have upcoming, like, Star Wars Outlaws. We have Young Jedi Adventures. We have Skeleton Crew on the horizon. We have a lot of things kind of in the pipeline, and I want to know what you're most excited in Star Wars coming up, which could be a toy thing, or it could be, in the actual live action and animation stuff, or anything else. What's got you most amped up?
All of it. The new media. Looking forward to Skeleton Crew. Looking forward to Andor Season 2.
Oh, yes.
I'm really curious about what the new era of Star Wars theatrical releases are bringing us. We know that 3 are definitely coming. I want to see what the Glover brothers have been doing with the Lando. I think it's a movie now, not a series. And of course, all of the related stuff that comes with those, specifically toys, because that's my thing. But I think I will always just be primarily drawn to the Star Wars universe.
You mentioned Lando, which I kind of want to bring up a thing that's been going around in the last day or so as we record this, which is that Justin Simien has talked a little bit more openly about what happened with his Lando project and it getting shelved and him feeling really sad about it. And it makes... I always have misgivings or mixed feelings. I shouldn't say misgivings. I also have misgivings about almost like the fan base learning too much of how stuff gets made. But at the same time, I like the fan base knowing how stuff gets made because I do feel like there's a lot of corporate fanfic where people are imagining how they think things get made. And like, I know that projects just do get shelved and whatnot. What is your take on that? Should we know as much as we know about behind the scenes stuff, or would it be better if it were still more like, hey, here's your trailer, a movie's coming out?
Yeah, that level of surprise is always more welcome. There's very poor news aggregation now. Maybe one sort of in the know media center will talk about something, and then so many others take that and say, so-and-so says,
right,
without doing their own research on if it was accurate or not. Like, from what I understand, the Lando project wasn't shelved so much as it was just a creative team change. Donald and his brother, Steven, I think it is, took it over, or it was put into their hands, and Justin went on to make other things. I'm actually excited about what he's doing with the voice actors from Star Trek Lower Decks. Tawny, I think. I'll have to look that up.
I loved his Haunted Mansion.
Haunted Mansion was fun. So, like as of a year ago, we heard about the Glovers taking over Lando. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, like one source will drop something and then dozens of others will run with that. Their own spins, their own misleading headlines. I do miss the days. Like, I was a big collector of the movie magazines like Starlog, Fantastic Films,
Cinefex, yeah.
Cinefex Premiere Magazine. Had a subscription to 2 or 3 of those. And so you might learn a little bit here and there a few months before anything official, but it was rarely, from what I remember anyway, coverage of production, like what's in progress right now or what's changing behind the scenes. It was usually, this movie's coming out this fall. And, from that article in that magazine, very soon after you'd get that trailer. And lead times for any production are so long, it's hard to learn that something will happen in the future, and then that it is happening, and then that it is in post-production, and years after you first heard of it, you'll finally get it.
Right. Well, and not everything makes it all the way, and that's not unusual at all, and I think that's part of like the problem, right? Is that the model of how things get pitched or idealized and then picked up and then from there to the finish line, there are a lot of things that can happen, and a lot of things don't make it, and they never have, but we didn't always know about it, which shifts things a little bit.
And there's things that happen with almost every production that, if you are a production nerd, you know about, but, the vast majority of fans of stuff are casual fans, and when they hear, like, reshoots, for example, that's always programmed into a production schedule. They shoot the thing, they assemble it, they see what's working, what isn't. They might have to reshoot something. And, the casual fans see reshoots and think, oh, it's in trouble.
Right.
But that is very, very rarely the case of something like not working out and them having to shift gears and actually do something different than the main plan.
Yeah.
So that's... every article that mentions, it's gone under like 2 weeks of reshoots and everyone's doom and gloom over that. I always want to just like reassure everyone. And I see people, other people do it, that it's fine. This stuff happens all the time.
Yeah. In the realm of fantasy thoughts, so it's very interesting to me because you don't read the books as much as I do. And the comics.
I'd like to. I miss it. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
But what's interesting is that I didn't read those. I started picking stuff up from you. Like, I didn't read the Zahn books on my own. I picked them up after you had them. And it's just interesting to me. So I'm wondering whether it's from books or from your own imagination or something that's been mentioned in a movie or a TV show that we've never actually seen. Is there a story that you wish we would get in live action or animation that we haven't yet?
I'm going to bring up Lando again. I would love to... I had a lot of fun with Solo.
Me too.
I enjoyed the glimpses of, the character traits we came to know from the original trilogy. And actually, since those are out of the way, just have a pure like Han Solo adventure, I think would be a lot of fun. I want to believe that the Glover's Lando production would touch on that. If they don't, and it's all Lando, awesome. But yeah, make Solo 2 happen. I support that hashtag. As far as what hasn't been made yet, I wish I'd played Knights of the Old Republic. I never did. You did, I think.
Yeah.
But what I have heard about that, and you back me up if you believe it too, but that sounds like an incredibly rich, very, very Star Wars-y story that might look amazing, like brought into live action.
Yeah. You surprised me with that one.
But animation is 100% viable avenue to take any of these. There's been a strong push in recent years, particularly, to please take away your childish views of animation, like the way it's presented in the news, award shows. Animation has never been just for kids. It's just been the primary market for it. We've gotten some amazing Star Wars animations, mature, or at least young adult productions that have been really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, whatever medium it ends up in, and animation is not a genre. It's a medium. It's a tool to storytell. Whatever does happen, in the future, whether it's live action or animation, I'll definitely check it out. I'm not going to form any opinion before I actually see it. I just want to look forward to it and hope it's amazing.
You don't want the new live action version of the Droids series?
I do. I'll at least check it out. If I don't like it, I'll move on to something I do like.
I love it. Brian, thank you for hanging out with me. I know you're kind of stuck with me most of the time, but we actually don't sit and talk about Star Wars in this way ever. I mean, we talk about it obviously, but like, I don't usually get to quiz you, and I don't get to interview you.
Yeah, we talk about pets and insurance and house stuff.
Travel schedules,
grocery shopping,
logistics, life logistics. And there's a lot of, this is cool. Did you see this? But
And did you order the new OSHA mech-neck figure? Yes, I did. Okay, great.
Great, cool. We're covered. I don't need to order it myself, but I'm going to do it anyway because I have a problem. That's me. It's not Ryan. So thank you for doing this with me. Can you tell people how they can find you if they want to pelt you with more questions about toys? Your toy experience specifically?
I'm pretty much just on Twitter at the moment, at Halfmoth, HALFMOTH. We have a t-shirt store over on Threadless. One of the primary items is our Hut Tongs Day charity shirts that we make every year for the last few years. If anyone wants to check that out, it's the Shastine Fry shop. Or you could probably search me on Twitter and you'll find the Hut Tongs Day account, and there's links there. And that's pretty much it for me.
Marvelous. You can, of course, find me as Surliest Girl on Twitter and SurlyGirly5 on Instagram. You can find Brian as Swankmotron just about anywhere, and our wonderful super producer Mike as the Mike Pilot just about everywhere. That is episode 551 of Full of Sith. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me along on this.
Of course, you're my favorite person. Thank you again to our audience, and the Force will be with you always.
Sir, if you'll not be meeting me, I'll close down for a while.